Welcome, this is challenge number 2 of the color unit. This will be comprised of the color wheel and creating color schemes. So we're going to start off with the color wheel here. The goal is to create 12 evenly spaced colors. They should be not blended, and so make sure you look at those details there as we move on. But here's what I have to start with. I'm using acrylic paints today. You can use watercolors as well. They both have different properties to them, but you do need paint that you can then blend together. This is the goal for the starting point of the color wheel, 2 different rings. I have a compass here, and if you have access to a compass, fantastic. If not, try and find 2 things that you can trace around. Freehanding a circle is going to look not quite as good. After that, I'm going to sort of create a big X in the center of the circle, and then divide that into thirds. And so those are the 12 evenly spaced, relatively evenly spaced pieces. So you can see that I have the 2 parts there. I'm basically just eyeballing the creating the thirds of those. So if you have a protractor, great, 30 degrees, but if not, that's fine. And then when I create the triangle here for the next part, that's pointing to the primary colors. And so make sure you see how the points of the triangle are pointing to a color and not in the space between 2 colors of those bars. And so once that happens, then I create those outer triangles there, and then I'm going to label everything primary, secondary, and tertiary. And then you can see the final part there. I have the inner triangle divided into thirds too, and so that's going to be my 3 primaries to start with. I have a nice cadmium yellow here. If you have, make sure you try and grab a yellow that's going to be saturated in hue. It depends on the type of material you're working with. A watercolor, it's going to be very different. And my goal here is to have a nice solid flat color here. And that's the goal for all 12 of these colors that are going to be a part of the color wheel. And I'm taking my time. I'm speeding it up for your sake, but I'm trying to go right up to those edges. Craftsmanship is important here with these so that colors aren't blending together, but it's not to a militant level of craftsmanship. Is that if it's, the edges aren't 100% precise, I'm okay with that. I'm not the most neat painter myself. So after that, I'm going to start working on the red here, and you can see the inner triangle there is going to comprise of the 3 primary colors. My suggestion to you, and you'll see why in a moment, is that the arrangement of the colors on your palette should be the same as they are on the wheel. And unfortunately, because I have my red on the other side and the blue reflective and not the same, I sort of start making mistakes almost immediately. So just make things a little easier for yourself. So make sure you clean the brush out between colors. I also start with yellow and go to the red, then blue, because the blue would have a much bigger influence on the yellow. Once I have those there, I'm going to now create the secondary colors, which is blending of all of the primary colors. So the orange here, I'm trying to create, you can see this is the mistake I made. I put the orange on the wrong side of the wheel. That's where the green goes. So I painted over with white. If you did watercolor, I would suggest actually just cutting that shape out and then plating a new swatch behind it. So you can see there I created the orange, and I'm going to jump right into the tertiary colors since I already have this mixed. And tertiary colors are the blending of the primary and the adjacent secondary color. I'm now jumping down to the violets. You can see there I had a practice piece of paper to test the color on. It looks usually very different on the brush when it's thinly painted compared to when it's very thick on the palette. I'm then going to create the tertiary colors, which is the blending of that violet and the blue there, and then it will be the blending of the violet and the red on the other side. Or, yes, there we go. And I'm creating this sort of inner triangle there that's going to be pointing to the secondary colors, so you can see how they all sort of work together there. So now that that white was dry, I can paint the green over top of it, and then I'm mixing the green and the yellow for the tertiary color. And you can see that there's some white space between the lines and things like that, and I'm okay with that, so you should be too. So there's the final color wheel. You can see I have all 12 colors blended. It should be evenly spaced. That's your real goal here, much more so than neatness. But once that's all done, since we have all this paint mixed, we're gonna jump into this idea of creating color schemes, which are combinations of color. There's particular ones that artists use for many different reasons. And so I'm essentially just going to be creating a bunch of swatches here, almost like in a paint store, is that I'm going to take, I'm experimenting with color at this point. I'm basically creating, working with the three elements of color that we've already discussed. I'm creating blending hue and working in different levels of saturation and value within all of these here. I'm trying to create a wide range. The more of a range I have, the more variety I'm going to be able to create in the color schemes that I'm working with. Allowed this to dry, and then once that was dry, I then cut up all of these pieces here. And so I created these little chips of paint, and I'm having the colors go right up to the edges, creating these little squares. They don't have to be exactly the same, but with them I can know that I can create these colors because I can create basically any color with the combination of the three primaries and black and white. And if you have watercolor, that's fine because you're just going to use water instead of white paint to dilute your materials. And so once I have all these together, I can now start picking out different color schemes. I'm going to give you an example of a complementary color scheme. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to label it. And I'm going to use a yellow and a violet because they're opposing each other on the color wheel. And you're going to see that I'm using more than two colors because usually a complementary is just yellow and violet, but there's many different varieties of that hue that I can use with different levels of saturation. And so this is how artists really work. I'm going to glue those together, and you're going to do the same thing for monochromatic, analogous, complementary, triadic, and split complementary. So you will actually need to research those. You are certainly capable of finding this material on the internet, and you're going to be labeling them yourself, and you're going to be turning in the different color schemes. So make sure you get all of them and try and work with a variety of materials. And the more colors you work with and you create on the color swatches, the more variety you're going to have in your color schemes. And we're going to talk more about color schemes later, but these are a great way in creating exciting, dynamic pieces that have color sort of in the forefront of your thought while you're working on different projects. And you're going to be able to keep these for the rest of the semester.